Welcome to episode 3 of the Performance Zone. My name is Dan Alexander, your host. And today I'm joined by not Dan Martin, but the Dan Martin. Dan is a founder performance coach, ex-recruiter, and he's with me today to give you wonderful people some insights and some wisdom. Is that a good intro, Dan?
It's a wonderful intro, and there is a part of me that hates the fact that it's the Dan Martin. There's my ego that loves it, but then there's my my soul, which is like, that's not good, Dan. We don't need that. But
We can make
it's
you a
not a
start.
choice.
There's only one
Yeah,
Dan Martin, but maybe
yeah. There's only one. Yeah, no, it was out of necessity. I got shafted by GoDaddy, who didn't allow me to have the domain that I wanted, unfortunately.
what would you have chosen?
Just Dan Martin. That's all I
Yeah,
wanted.
makes sense.
Yeah, I
Makes
just
sense.
wanted Dan Martin. Like, it's like maybe it's me being finicky, but there was the option to have like Dan Dash Martin, and I just didn't really want that. It could have had Daniel Martin or Danny Martin, but yeah, I wanted to just stick to what people call me, and the only option to keep the .com and nice and clean was the Dan Martin. So
Yeah, fair enough.
here we
I like
are.
it. It's
Yeah,
catchy.
yeah, good, good.
Maybe I'll be the Dan Alexander. Who knows? But
Yeah, I've seen a few people do it nowadays. One of my mentees, he's the Jake O'Connor, and they seem to be popping up. So it's just like, I am the one. Yeah.
100%, 100%. Well, look,
Uh,
great to have you on. Welcome to the show. As we were talking about before doing this a while back, I imagine some of the listeners of this may have caught the Neuro Recruiter, which was the previous podcast I did, but I wanted to really relaunch this for founders, for recruiters, and all around like high performance culture, succeeding, and how that spills in out into other areas of their life. I mean, typically the only reason why people are usually in recruitment is because of the money, right? I mean, it's pretty fair to say. But there are a lot of problems that come with that as well. So, but just welcome to the show, Dan. What are you seeing out there at the moment? What's going on?
Misguided goals that we spoke about leading into this, right? And the perfect segue from what you just mentioned there around the sole focus for the most part. There are exceptions to the rule of people who, love engaging with other humans and finding them their dream job. But if we are honest, most of the time it is the money, and it's positioned in that way, isn't it? From a leadership standpoint, if you're in a top-down culture business, the the elevator pitch or the hook from a corporate perspective to get people to join their business is often we will pay more, whether that's in a base salary or it's in a commission structure. It's usually money. And people buy into that because, well, we have this idea in modern society today that money is life. And there is truth to that because, if you don't have any money at all, you're going to end up living a pretty poor quality of life. And go and ask a homeless person how happy they are. The answer you'll get is not very happy at all. So there is substance to this idea that money brings happiness in a way, but it all comes back to that place of intention. What's the intention? If you want to go and earn tons of money to impress other people and feel validated by doing so, then it's not coming from a great place, really, is it? But if there's an intention to go and earn loads of money, because in doing so, you'd be able to give, if you're this way inclined, that children a private education so that they can go on to grow and become the best possible version of themselves. And, you want to buy your husband or wife a new car because their car's running out of steam or whatever, then it comes from a totally different place internally, doesn't it? So there's a lot of nuance that comes into the conversation when we talk about money. But looping back around to what your question was, what am I seeing based on the work that I've done with people who are in the recruitment space over the last 3 years? It often doesn't come from that wholesome and abundant place. It often comes from a place of insecurity and scarcity. So that gives us a nice topic to go
Well, I
delving
think
into.
if you wanted to give the listeners a synopsis of the value that Dan can bring. I mean, you've certainly framed the whole conversation there, right? Dan, you're a founder performance coach, so you're very much for the owners of the business,
Hmm.
and it's understanding that there's obviously more to life than money. Now, don't get it twisted. I love money. Money does make the world go round in certain ways, and I'd given an option, I'd rather have money than not have it, like for sure, right?
Mm.
It certainly makes things easier. But when people fixate on that as like the one thing and the only thing they care about, then even if they get money, they'll often die poor, right? So
Mm.
it's it's kind of going into that narrative in terms of what's actually really driving us as individuals. But just before we jump into that, let's just backtrack. So before getting into this, before becoming a coach, I mean, if you know, go way back when. So you were a recruiter, like you know, for many years.
Mm.
If I get that right.
Yeah, I was. I was in the recruitment space for quite a while. I think around 8 years in total. I started off as a consultant for an organization in Hertfordshire where I was placing domestic gas engineers originally, and then moved into trades and labor, so like chippies and painter and decorators and site workers and that kind of thing. But I was made redundant from that business because they dissolved the company and merged it into another branch of the business, which was in London. And then from there went to work for a company called GI Group, which was really good. I think they were previously Right for Staff, which you might remember. They got bought out by an American company, GI Group, and they had this cool idea, which on paper looked really, really good, where they had this extensive network of branches around the UK where they were working with, forget what the phrase is for it now, the people who are kind of at like an entry level of their career. So you'd be like office admin people and that kind of stuff, and you know, cleaners and that sort of stuff. So pretty low level. But there was nothing that was being done to capitalize on the kind of white collar um, roles which those organizations had available. So they launched this business or subsidiary of the business called GI Professional. And the idea was for us to come in and leverage the existing relationships which the 40 or 50 branches had around the UK to then help them fill the roles which were currently not being utilized. But as you would probably expect, listening to that, if this new guy comes in and then starts calling you up, going, right, can I have the contact details of your client, please? I'm going to work their roles. Like, there was so much resistance there because they were like, no, it's my client. I don't even know you. First of all, why would I want to give you my client? And because our managers were like, well, you need it. That's what you're here to do. And their managers were like, no, we put the work in to win that client. Of course, we're not going to give it away. So whilst it seemed like a really good idea, it was just an uphill battle that didn't work too well. So stayed there for a little while, and that was the first time I entered a leadership position as well at 21 years old, feeling like a total fraud and imposter, managing two guys who were 5 years older than me. However, I landed in this spot, but it was a nice learning experience, as is more or less every day when working in recruitment. You don't know what's going to come around the corner. So that was cool. But the friction just got too much to deal with for a while. It was like
They give you a lot of shit.
yeah, all the time, all the time. And it was very, very difficult to make progress with that, you know, where we were sold on the idea that we don't want you doing BD because we've already got all of the clients. But I can't get the clients because they don't want to give them to us. So it was this constant rat race cycle of not being able to make any progress. So I left there after 18 months or so, and then joined another engineering recruitment business called Redline up in Luton and stayed there for a little while. But at that point, I kind of felt like I was coming towards the end of my shelf life in recruitment and just wasn't getting the same level of enjoyment that I had done previously, and wanted more autonomy, wanted more freedom, but felt trapped because I didn't know how to leverage the skills that I had acquired in recruitment, as many people do. And it's another topic to get into. You know, there are so many skills that people learn through working in recruitment, but it causes us to feel quite trapped and confined because, well, what am I going to do with this? It's exclusive to recruitment, but there are many avenues, and I thankfully found one in financial services, so the umbrella industry, which contract recruiters will know very, very well, which gave me what I wanted. So the ability to work from home, which I did from 2018, so ahead of the curve a little bit on that, and a lot more autonomy to manage my own accounts and service recruitment agencies from the other side of the fence, as opposed to being inside the business.
Mm.
And it's really cool. I really enjoyed doing that. But caveat to my enjoyment was that I enjoyed it too much because I was drinking quite heavily at the time and sniffing quite a lot of coke.
Mm.
And it's no secret there's quite a lot of that behavior that goes on in the recruitment industry. And you know, when you're put into a umbrella company like I was and given a company credit card and said, it's your job to go and build relationships with recruiters as you see fit. Obviously, don't do anything illegal, but go on relationships with them. And over the 4 years or so that I was working in that industry, it sent me down a path of self-destruction in many ways because I was taking recruiters out 2, 3, sometimes 4 times per week, and then going out with my friends on a Friday and Saturday night and doing the same kind of thing, just a
Mm.
lot more severely. And it got to a point where I was like really dependent on alcohol and cocaine. And it came to a head when we were forced into lockdowns, and the best thing that ever happened to me because it stopped that life. I was no longer able to go out and drink and buy drugs and all of that kind of stuff. So I was forced to confront the reality of my situation. And that was really hard because it meant admitting that actually I was running away from something. It wasn't just fun and games, or I just wanted to go out and get fucked and have fun with the boys or whatever anymore. It had gone past the point of being fun, and it was actually becoming a coping mechanism. And for me, in that space that I had over that lockdown period, it was clear that it was all coming back to the fact
What,
that I was adopted.
what were you running away from at that time?
The fact that I was adopted and I didn't know how to integrate that into my life. You know, you somebody who's trained in NLP, you'll know all about beliefs and the importance of the lens through which
Mm.
they create for us to see reality. For me, when I understood what it meant to be adopted at a young age of about 6 or 7 years old, I internalized this belief that I wasn't good enough for my birth parents. Thus, they gave them away. And, as children, we'll always internalize everything as being our fault because we haven't got enough reference material in our hippocampus, the part of our mind that stores memories, to cross reference it against. So we naturally make everything about us. And even though birth parents were doing the best that they could with what they had available to them, I internalized it as being me that was bad or me that was not lovable or whatever. And I didn't know how to manage that emotion and belief in my ability of not being enough. So the best way for me to cope was to avoid it. And I'd
Mm.
do that by drinking and taking drugs until I couldn't do that anymore. And then it was just here at the forefront of my mind, the
Yeah.
reality.
It's a really interesting. I mean, you got, and thank you for being so open and sharing with the audience. I mean, we obviously had a conversation prior to this, and
Mm,
what you were happy to share and what you weren't. But I really appreciate your candidness and openness because there will be so many people, right? And obviously, not everyone's gonna come from that sort of a family dynamic. But there will be so many people because of high performance.
mhm,
I mean, if you look at any high performance industry, and a good one is the culinary industry and chefs and like cocaine is absolutely rife in that industry because it's so high pressured that
mm,
people use it as a crux and a coping mechanism, and recruitment is no different, right? I mean, when we're talking about big sums of money here, right? I mean,
mhm,
it's a multi-million dollar gamble people are making on
mm,
recruitment, and so many people don't make it. But as a stimulant and a drug that really helps people get through and gives them that confidence to do something that they feel is like they're naturally nervous about. You can understand why so many people rely on it,
mm,
and also want to do that to break free.
mm,
It's such an interesting, and I don't think people that there are not enough people having the conversation in recruitment in many different industries, and it's so widely accepted that people will go out and do packet on the weekends and whatnot,
mm.
haven't realized that actually they have become addicted to it, right?
Yeah.
And it's obviously, we'll go into that in just a second, but that's obviously you went down a path of looking to help other people and doing that, which is like phenomenal work. I just wanted to touch on just the one thing you mentioned about the feelings of I'm not good enough anymore.
Hmm.
Did you ever read the book I'm okay, you're okay, transactional analysis?
No, but I did learn about it. The grid. I'm okay, you're okay. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah,
I
and
didn't know there's a book actually. I'll pick that up.
they say it can't. Yeah, so I mean, transactional analysis was something that people learned about in like the 50s, 60s, and it was like, and part of Sandler sales. So Benjamin Dennehy, who a lot of people will know, like, very famous for, really bastardizing bastardizing Sandler, but making it very popular, especially on LinkedIn. And Fair Play's done a phenomenal job on it. But transactional analysis and psychology is a big part of it. But it's something that people don't really have a great kind of knowledge, but it's very interesting, the parent, the adult, and the child, and that child voice, especially when you are young, and you
Hmm.
up until the age of 7, you're only really given, there's no adult filter in what you think, so it's only your parents' influences, and then the child, like, which is, it's not fair, or
Hmm.
these beliefs that you have. But it's very interesting work. Anyone listening to this and or watching this and curious, the book is called, I'll put it in the show notes, it's called I'm Okay, You're Okay. um and it's, I think the author is, let's have a quick before I reference, is it Eric Berg? I'm okay, you're okay. Oh, Anthony Thomas Harris. And there was also a follow-up book to that called
Mm.
Games People Play, which was fascinating. And they're like shortcuts. So two books really worth checking out. I'm Okay, You're Okay, and Games People Play. But anyway, back to the show. So, so Dan, so you've gone on this journey of self-discovery. The world's locked down, COVID's happening. You've
Mhm.
realized that you've come to a head, and that that it can't go on
Mm.
anymore. So what changes do you make at your life at that point?
Nothing drastic and overnight. It's not like an overnight realization that I need to burn everything to the ground and completely reset my life. But there were two kind of core experiences really. At the back end of 2018, no, 2019. Back end of 2019, I had a psychedelic experience, which I won't go into too much detail on now because we will be here for literally hours. But
Did you lick a
um,
toad?
no, close. I drank the drink with the same active ingredient. So the
Really?
ingredient in the toad is 5-MeO DMT, and then ayahuasca is actually what I drank. So it's a South American brew that's been in existence for thousands of years and big part of that shamanic tradition.
Was that on
And
a on travels that you went and did that, or was that in the UK?
it was in Peru. So it was if you could call it a holiday, I don't know, but it was 2 weeks that we were there for. Or no, 10 days actually. It was 10 days, so it's a real flying visit. Didn't really get to see that much of Peru whilst we were there, but we friend and I we flew there with the intention of going to drink ayahuasca. And we were both at a bit of a crossroads, right? Like best mate, he worked in sales as well. He sold software, and was both performing really well. Me using a lot of drugs whilst doing so,
Mm.
but was both like, is this it? Like, is this what we are going to do for the rest of our lives? And we couldn't quite come to terms with that reality or potential reality. And, we're both avid listeners of Joe Rogan, and we heard him talk about ayahuasca a few times and had a few guests come on and talk about this magic potion that can open up parts of your mind that you can't really access when sober. And we was like, oh, well, that sounds kind of cool and interesting. That might be a fun thing to do. And we found this company in Peru where they do like retreat experiences. We booked a couple of tickets and went there a few months later and turned up and got the shock of our lives because we didn't realize the depth of it. We thought this will be fun. Like people take magic mushrooms and they go to a festival and they kind of, this is cool. No, that's not what it's about. It's work. It's like real deep inner work to confront parts of your soul that you've probably been avoiding. And it was that really sent me in the opposite direction to where I was going gradually over time. It's like, this reality that you think you're living in, Dan, where everything's fine and you can just go out and get fucked up and not really worry about the consequences. Yeah, here's a hammer, and it just it smashed that. I was like, oh yeah, there's actually something deeper going on. Like I am avoiding something, and then lockdown happened shortly after, and it was all starting to come up and come to the surface, and that was the realization that there was a lot of avoidance happening there.
Do you mind me asking? And I appreciate this is a public forum, right? So this is like,
No, I'm an open book, mate. You ask what you want.
need a moment to catch your breath. Ready to go from good to unstoppable? At Bamboo Performance, our one-on-one coaching, exclusive live events, and dynamic online recruitment training platform help recruiters smash every target every time. Visit our website now and discover your highest potential. Let's get back to the show. So your relationship with your adopted family,
Mm,
how was that?
mm, great. Genuinely, it was really, really good. Um, I can't complain about anything, to be honest. And that's what I found so hard to process when I was going through that awakening and process of self-discovery. It's like, why am I in so much pain about this? Because if I look at my life on paper, everything's great. You know, I've been supported financially, emotionally, psychologically. Yeah, I've had some challenges, but what kid doesn't when you're growing up? There's always going to be difficult times between um, parents and their children. But the challenge, which is another part of this, which I haven't mentioned yet, is that my adopted mum died when I was 18 of cancer. So it was good. Like upbringing was good. I was a bit naughty, but then the challenge which did present itself was that she died, and because at that point in time I was emotionally unavailable, a lot of that driven by my own um, choices to take drugs and drink alcohol instead of listening to my emotions and trying to understand them. So the big challenge was her dying and me not knowing how to process the grief.
Mm.
And grief can do that to people. It's after now training as a therapist and understanding emotions a lot more deeply. Grief is a difficult one. It really is, because you'll know, as somebody who's trained in NLP, a lot of other emotions they can kind of be reframed and reworked, and you look at them in a slightly different way. In my experience of experiencing grief personally, and also coaching clients through difficult moments of grief, doesn't always work like that, because it's kind of totally outside of your control a lot of the time, unless you break up with someone and that's how you experience it. But yeah, that was a difficult thing for me to process, and it's only realistically in the last 12 months or so that I've kind of done that. Feel like I'm at a place of peace with that, and this is
Maybe
12
it
years.
takes someone else that knows to see someone else. But I can see the work you've done, and I can hear it in your
Mm,
voice and the words you use. And it's a difficult thing that unfortunately most of us will have to go through. Losing our parents, and a couple of years ago, my father passed away. So I can completely relate to all the emotions experienced that you're freely giving up here, and I can already tell, right? This podcast will be one of the most popular episodes that we'll ever have on the series, and the reason why is because you're so open with this stuff, Dan, and you're so
mm,
obviously. I guess that's one of the reasons why you then went into the coaching on the addiction side of things, right? To
mhm,
help others that are in the same kind of mindset as you were.
mm, mm. Yeah, that's right. It felt like uh, the right thing to do. It felt like my purpose.
Mm.
And this is a word that's getting thrown around a lot more frequently nowadays, which is brilliant because it needs to be. But uh, about a year or so after the first lockdown, I realized that I had to get away from where I was environmentally. So I jumped on Spare Room, which is the website where you go to find like a room for rent. And I found this place that was in the middle of nowhere in Wales. And I thought, well, that feels about right. It feels like something you can see in a movie. I feel like the guy is going to go and disappear and reset his life and maybe grow a beard and hair really long. I didn't actually do that, but
Nice to grow hair, I would say, but
got a strong beard though. Um, so I moved to Wales, not having decided to train as a therapist yet. Whilst I was there in this barn house where the landlord had 3 rooms for rent, there was a guy who moved in who was a recovering alcoholic. And after a couple of months of living together, he had a pretty serious relapse where he bought himself a bottle of vodka, he locked himself in his room, and he was also psychotic as well. So he had this dialogue between him and the vodka where he felt like it was communicating to him and he was screaming and smashing things up. And normally, when something like that happened, I just wouldn't know what to do. I just go into a fight or flight, probably freeze response, and just shut everything out. And it's not my problem, not my monkey, not my circus kind of thing. But for whatever reason, in that moment, I just felt cool to just go and sit with him. So I did. I sat and just understood what was going on for him and listened. And it was a really beautiful moment. And he said, Dan, That's the first time I've ever been seen and heard properly. Thank you. And it was that insight that just went, right, well, this is me. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to help people like this. It gave me that validation, in a positive way. Validation isn't always bad. Sometimes we can be really positively validated. And that was one of those experiences for me. It's like, it's clear as day. I'm feeling unfulfilled in work. I'm avoiding a lot of the pain. I can go to therapy myself, figure myself out, and I can go and pass the torch onto someone else. It just made so much sense. So that's how the realization to train as a therapist and then eventually work with people who are addicted to things came about almost accidentally in a way.
And so then you then spent a good 2.5 years in that, sort of taking that mantle on and really being the guy, right? That
Mm.
would, the drug and alcohol addiction coach, which I think is something that, yes, again, so many people um will 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 need in this day and age, especially like we're back in the office now. COVID's, people are going out again.
Mm-hmm.
Recruitment's still happening. It's still high pressure. Um, there'll be, especially this particular industry, there's a lot of people that would really benefit from talking to somebody like you in that scenario. But
Mm.
you've made you made and I'm sure you've done some amazing work in that time. There's an end date on that kind of thing on your LinkedIn, so you've obviously made a conscious decision to move away from that kind of
Mm-hmm.
mantle. Like, what was the decision on your end to do that?
It's a very existential one, and it was difficult to make that decision because you can tell by the way that I've communicated that there was so much emotion in my decision to train as a therapist and go and work with addiction clients. I felt like that was my calling, my life purpose. But then last year, as I had done that for a couple of years, and also part of the story that I haven't shared, which I won't go into enormous detail on, is that same friend who I mentioned earlier, who I went to Peru with. He also trained as a therapist the year before me. He launched a coaching business, and at the time I was coming towards the end of my qualification, he was completely fully booked with clients and couldn't take any more on. And he said, Dan, I've got an opportunity for you to come and work with me here at TMP, Total Mental Performance. Do you want to join? It'd be a good opportunity for you to build up a bit more revenue so that you can quit your job and have a bit more stability. And all the stars aligned, kind of thing. I did that, and it was great. Got loads of experience working with online fitness coaches, coaching them on their mental performance. So it's like coachception, gets a little bit confusing, but yeah, great opportunity. But ultimately, I still had this feeling that it wasn't mine. And I'm sure that there'll be many people, perhaps yourself, but definitely listeners who can resonate with this. It's like you're doing something which, yeah, might pay you well. And there might be moments of your job where you enjoy it, but deep down, it's not your thing. And some people are happy being employees their whole life. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But there are others who are like you, entrepreneurial. Like, no, I do want to go and do my own thing. And as much as I love this friend of mine and loved his purpose and his mission in the business, it just didn't feel like it was me. So I communicated that to him in 2023 and said, look, mate, I need to scale back because I want to focus on building my own, at the time, addiction business. But then the unexpected um, situation, which was happening last year, was that as I distanced myself from his business and gave myself more bandwidth and energy, I started to feel more disconnected from the addiction work. And it was so confusing because as I said, I thought, this is me. This is what I'm going to do with my life. But as I got more capacity to think about it, what I realized over the course of realistically 12 months was that in staying in addiction as a coach for other people, I felt like I was confining my own growth because to attract clients online, I had to speak about my addiction story every single day and talk about addiction every single day. And it's a heavy topic, right? Like it is. It's not a really sexy, fluffy thing to talk about because it's often fueled by some form of trauma or pain. And it just felt like such a heavy thing to be talking about
You
all the
dragged over
time.
your goals daily by
Yeah,
yourself.
yeah, that's right. That's right. And I really felt like I was holding myself back through that. But the complication was that I'd convinced myself this was my purpose. So there's like a part of me which was like, no, this is what you're here to do. You have to go and do this. But then there's another deeper part of me which is going, it just doesn't feel right anymore. Just doesn't feel right anymore.
It's a it's a funny thing, language, because it's all made up and like
Yeah,
no purpose. It's suddenly you're confined to doing certain behaviors because you told yourself a story that was
yeah,
made up by
that's
yourself.
right. Yeah, so stupid sometimes, aren't we, as humans? But yeah, that was my experience of last year. So it's a
Did
really
you
difficult decision.
did you feel that when you shed yourself of that label of, I'm the addiction coach specialist, that's who I am. That was like the final part of like your healing and that chapter in your journey and moving away from
Yeah,
that.
that's it. That's what it is. Yeah, it felt like closure for me on a part of my life. I was still kind of connected to it in some way, even though I was the guy who was helping others. It did become part of my identity because I was sharing my story all the time, and you know, in that world, it felt like a decision that I had to make to prove a point to myself that I was beyond that, and that actually came with quite a lot of pushback. I don't think we were connected on LinkedIn at the time, but up until uh, August last year, I was sober from December 2022. And that was something that I felt like I wanted to do in order to lead from the front and say, look, I've done it. You can too. That was the methodology. But again, that sobriety thing almost became prison for me because I was like, well, is this me for the rest of my life? Do I have to not drink forever? If I'm the addiction guy, does that mean that I can't endorse one beer a year? It all just felt so limiting. So, and part of that identity shedding was, no, you know what? I am past this. I'm going to have a beer. I'm going to prove to myself that it's okay. I can consciously moderate. And I announced that on LinkedIn and I got so much hate, mate. So
Wow.
much pushback from,
Who? Like, you're just
yeah,
the one.
yeah, from well, the addiction community primarily, because I kind of built a network of other, like practitioners or sober coaches or whatever. And
If I'm correct, that part of your sobriety is that if um you announce yourself from pretty much kind of like all stimulants, right? So if it's cocaine, it's cocaine and alcohol, right? And is that correct?
generally, yeah, sobriety is it's made up. It's not like a medical state or anything like that. It primarily comes from the 12-step AA based models. That's where sobriety originally comes from. So this is where it gets a little bit complicated, right? It's all wrapped up in religious ideology, which is what the 12-step and AA community is. So
Really?
yeah, it's built upon a Christian foundation, that program. Again, I just couldn't get on board with that because I probably call myself spiritual, but not religious.
Yep.
And I couldn't, get involved with that. But um, yeah, I got tons of pushback because if you're in that addiction community where you're either addicted or you're in recovery, there's no room given between those. And I didn't like that because I've gone from being an addict to a different label. I just wanted to be me.
Mm.
So I announced that I want to go and do this, and they were like, "You're dangerous. You shouldn't do that. How can you call
Wow.
yourself a coach when you're not being responsible yourself?" It's like this is just validating all of those beliefs that I had that I'm not in the right place. So in a roundabout way, it was good. Don't get me wrong, it hurt because I thought that I was doing the right thing in being vulnerable and being honest and saying this is where I'm at in my journey. I'm going to make this decision, and it gets kind of thrown back in your face, and that was quite hard and painful at the time. But as I said, in the same breath, it validated my decision to move away from that space.
I think it's one of those things that because you've made that decision, right? It's kind of like you're making changes in your life and shifts in your identity, shifts in a lot of different things, and it also casts a light onto other people in terms of what they're doing. And I
Mm,
guess they think, well, if you're doing that, then I can't do that. And it causes a conflict in terms of their kind of their beliefs, their identities, and there's a misalignment, which is obviously why there's been some sort of friction there.
mm,
You just before we get into what you're doing now, um,
mm.
as we're going through this, I'm scrolling up and down your LinkedIn, like
Yeah, yeah,
keeping track of timeline, go like I'm with you here and stuff. But
yeah.
one of the things I did notice, and we've touched on it a couple of times, is NLP and hypnotherapy. So
Yeah.
how much of that? do you like rely on day to day? Do you think about like how often is that used in your practice?
Every day. Yeah, every day. Um, as we've spoken about before, NLP almost becomes a way of life. Once you get your head around it and embed the language patterns and what have you into your mind, it just becomes a way of life and how you view the world. So personally, that's been transformational for me. The hypnotherapy side of things is something that I use every day, the principles of it, because it's built around the idea that 90+% of what we do is unconscious. And whether I'm approaching a client who needs to give up cocaine or alcohol, or they're consistently self-sabotaging their own business through fear of failure, it's the same stuff, right? It all comes from the unconscious mind. So the symptom that we present, whether it is like a performance-based problem, like I'm afraid to pick up the phone and dial because they might tell me to fuck off, like a fear of rejection type thing, or I'm not good enough, so I'm going to keep using cocaine. Comes back to the same place, doesn't it? So it's every day, mate. Every day I utilize it.
Need a moment to catch your breath? Ready to go from good to unstoppable? At Bamboo Performance, our one-on-one coaching, exclusive live events, and dynamic online recruitment training platform help recruiters smash every target every time. Visit our website now and discover your highest potential. Let's get back to the show. When you're, especially like hypnotherapy, right? When you're using hypnosis, do you? Because I've personally in coaching gone down this, and I'm still split on this.
Hmm.
Um, but sometimes I give people the tools, I try and upskill them, and sometimes they get it. Other times they look at me like I'm a bit weird and like, what are you talking about? But
Mhm.
I know that subconsciously, in every session that I do personally, there are embedded commands and suggestions that will help the person get better at what they do and effectively to give them the suggestion and the space to grow like subconsciously. And I always wondered, um, I guess there's no right or wrong on this, but like if people felt and if people feel with you that where if you introduce those practices as well, like if you're using hypnosis to get results, then
Hmm.
there's the whole question is it ethical? And
Hmm.
my pushback to that was always, well, like if I was a fitness coach and you said to me, I want the body of my dreams, and then in a year's time you're on, you're on the beach and you're like ripped six pack, like
Hmm.
first it seems you look great, and then someone said, "Yeah, did you know that Dan hypnotized you?" Is it ethical? Well, yeah, you got the body of your dreams, like you got everything you wanted. So I don't know. It's always I go in and out of like how much of the magic trick I reveal behind the scenes and behind the curtain, and
Yeah.
sometimes I just go, well, I'm not going to explain what I'm doing with this person. I'm just going to get them the desired result. Just curious, just to again, this is a very open conversation we're
Hmm.
having here, Dan. So how how much of this is how much consciously do you put into your work to get those results subconsciously, or is it unconscious, would you say?
I always make a point with clients that I'm not going to tell them what I'm doing. Like I make that as a straight up disclaimer because I don't want them trying to figure out the mechanics of what it is that we're doing. I just want them to surrender to the experience. And
Mm,
I think there are still some misconceptions around hypnosis, as if you're sitting down with the hypnotherapist and they're pointing a hypnotherapy gun at you and shooting you into hypnosis and then it's enacting change. It doesn't work like that. It would do if you were going down the stage hypnosis route where someone's like, right, close your eyes, and then it's like Darren Brown stuff. That's not hypnotherapy. There is a difference between hypnosis and hypnotherapy. Hypnosis I like to think of as trance. And trance is a state that everyone goes into, no matter who you are, multiple times throughout the day. Most people will do that when they brush their teeth in the morning. If you have the same breakfast every day, you're probably not thinking about it. And now that I've said it, you might think about it a little bit more. Like you get in the car, you drive to the office, likely quite absent minded. Then where you're talking to some people, or you're just daydreaming throughout the day. These are all micro trances that people are going into. And all hypnotherapy does is taps into those trance-like states that people experience with the intention of resolving whatever the thing is that is holding that person back. So most people can go into a state of hypnosis or trance. Others are more susceptible than some, but it's normal. It's a part of everyday life. But it's kind of been built up to this mystical, weird experience that only some have the ability to enact in others.
Yeah,
But
it's interesting. The more you learn about it, the more like it starts to make complete sense. But it's also when you're in, because many of you listen to this podcast right now or watching it will be, if you're, especially if you've gone the whole way through, probably in a state of trance right now, right? So it's the
yeah,
reason
that's
why we
right.
invest in long format content.
Yeah.
It's the reason why Pepsi will hire Beyonce and do the Super Bowl halftime and spend billions of dollars on it because the amount of eyeballs they've got that are all sat there for 2 hours on the sofa watching the Super Bowl in a state of trance, go and drink Pepsi, and
Mm.
that's the message they get. So it's this state of suggestibility. But
Mm-hmm.
the thing is that people don't understand is it's still their choice. So
Yeah.
it's like it's kind of like um the whole Bruce Almighty thing, where it's like you can't make people act against their free will. It's
Mm-hmm.
still their choice.
Mm.
And if someone chooses to do that, like especially in recruitment, right? If we're using like hypnotic language to influence influence clients or candidates or whoever, no one's going to leave their job because some guy on the phone told them to. Like, it's still your choice
Mm-hmm.
to do. You've got to go and hand your notice in. You've got to do that stuff, and it's really helping people. I think the language that you use there is like you're obviously helping people getting out of their own way and to
Mm.
facilitate their change and helping people to do the things that they actually want to do. And it's fascinating work, and it's obviously like, I geek out on this stuff, right? So
Mm.
I spent a lot of my career, a lot of my personal time, and I obsess um over it. But it's not always easy, and I think the experience that you had in Peru also reflects that point is that self-development isn't always easy. People think it's going to be fun, but it's not always fun, and
Mm.
sometimes it's hard and people aren't ready to face um they're not ready to face the mirror that sometimes it can hold up to you as well.
Mm.
So but that leads us nicely on to well two things really. So you've obviously you've launched well a couple of years ago, I guess, the Dan Martin. So you're coaching business specifically, which is you're a founder coach. So talk
Mm.
more about the work that you do, Dan. Like who do you work with, and what is the work that you typically tend to do?
Hmm. It's quite varied these days, to be honest. It can range from, as it has done, which created the transition away from addiction, working with leaders of recruitment businesses. Sometimes I was working with them on addictive patterns of behavior. But what I found, which led me to focus on this area exclusively, is that once we'd resolve whatever the addictive behavior of choice was, the conversation would naturally turn to work anyway, particularly as a leader of a business. You're going to have a lot of your identity wrapped up in work, and a lot of your time will be there as well. So it would move away from the looking back into the past, which is what therapy typically is, and moving forward to look into the future and understand, well, are you happy in your job? Like, do you actually enjoy what you're doing? And most often it would be a no. I'm kind of here out of necessity. So we get into the area of meaning, fulfillment, enjoyment, satisfaction. And then naturally, when you get into that area of trying to create a better life, as you alluded to a moment ago when you spoke about personal development, it's really elusive and sexy and glamorous, isn't it, when you think about personal development? But actually, what you will find as you start to move towards a deeper sense of meaning are things between you and that. The psychological blockers and limiting beliefs and difficult emotions that might not have been fully recognized yet, because there's a phrase that I really like, which is new levels, new devils. As you progress up the levels of personal development and change, you will encounter new challenges. And to think anything different is frankly stupid, right? So it's this kind of multifaceted approach that I do with most founders now, whether they're at a bigger level, where they're responsible for other employees and teams, like culture comes into the equation, and how can we re-engage employees and make sure that they're performing a lot better. Or it could be the earlier founders, like, for example, earlier this week started working with someone who runs a coaching business. So they've got a business coaching organization where they help other coaches, again, more coachception, build their presence on social media. So for him, he scaled his business to quite a sustainable level, doing around 50K per month. But he's hit a blocker, he's hit a ceiling, and he can't go beyond that. He can't quite figure out why.
Mm.
And he said that I'm aware that there's something stopping me. I just don't know what it is. So again, we're in that same category, kind of going from good to great, trying to really achieve a hell of a lot, but getting in their own way. They can't figure out what it is that's stopping them from getting to that next level. So we're looking at inner work using the hypnosis and NLP and other coaching type practices that was pointing towards addiction, and we're now pointing that towards performance. How can we utilize and leverage these tools to understand what it is that is preventing you from achieving what you want to achieve?
What do you think makes a great coach? Because I've got answers to that question,
Mm.
but I'm curious to see how they marry up with your version as well. So like from my perspective,
Mhm.
the coach and coaching's a very interesting thing because some coaches like coaches have got a funny stigma around them in terms of like well those who can't teach the rest of it, and and all the different stereotypes under the sun that come with coaching. I got one the other day, like, why aren't you sitting on a beach? Like, if you're so good at recruitment, why aren't you sitting on a beach somewhere, with a team of resources? I was like, well, who says I'm not? Like, you you don't know that stuff, right? Firstly, but secondly, I think there is that kind of stereotype with coaches where that they see that, but there's also people get like frustrated with the whole like making them find the answers out for themselves. And sometimes as a coach, I'll be honest, I cheat and I tell them
Mm.
the answers
Mm.
because I'd rather get where we need to get to in that in that conversation, right? To get to a point where if if I felt them struggling, and I will sometimes let them off the hook and give them the answers, because this whole they have to come up with the idea themselves, I think, is not a useful framework for us as
Mm.
coaches. But also, there are so many coaches that I think are out there that are, and you can interchange the word recruiter with coach or whoever, right? But there are so many people out there that are thirsty and hungry for
Mm.
deals, that they genuinely they care about too much, and they're too attached to the outcome of what that other person thinks and feels, and they want to be liked too much. And
Mhm.
I am a firm believer, and I always often say this to people, that my job is not to be liked. Like, I'm not here for you to like me. um I hope we get on for sure, and I hope we're going to have fun and have a laugh together. But you might also want to punch my face sometimes, and that's okay. That's how it's supposed to feel, right?
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think a great coach in my eyes is someone that can be direct, guide you through the conversation, can sometimes give you the answers directly when you need it at the right time. Cares less about being liked and more about the result for the client. If I can get the result for the client and they don't like me, I'm pretty happy at the end of it. Like,
Mm.
because I've got them the result. That's the reason why they've engaged in me and my services, to get you a result, right?
Mhm.
And I really personally like hang my hat on that whole thing in terms of like, right, okay, that is your business, your result, whatever the thing is that they're being coached on, that is the most important thing to me. How do you challenge, or what are your thoughts on that?
No, I agree with that. I agree. There's a great insight that I learned maybe last year, possibly the year before, which really helped me compartmentalize what coaching is and how its brothers, sisters, and cousins, I guess, come into the picture. Coaching is perceived to be only asking questions, and I have worked with people like that before, and it has been helpful. But you're right. Sometimes you do just want to be nudged or helped along.
The challenge I've just to interject, Dan, the challenge I've got with that, right, is when you go with a pure coaching framework, like, and you work with a coach, they don't really need to know anything about what it is that you know about, because the
Mm.
framework carries through the change work, right? But
Mm.
sometimes it's frustrating where you want to know that person knows what you know and what you're talking and knows and can
Yeah.
empathize with the with the challenge, and
Mm.
they can actually they can be a coach, they can also be a mentor and guide you as much
Mm.
as asking those great questions. I think that's where the challenge comes, and especially when you're working with recruiters, like, and you'll be able to test to this, that they want to know that you know how to do a deal, that you know how to
Mm.
headhunt, that you know how to cold call, that you know how to switchboard and handle specific objections, and like you know what it feels like to walk a mile in their shoes. I think that's why people, the first thing I say to people is that I am a recruiter. Like that is who I am. I just
Mm.
also happen to be a fucking good coach, you
Mhm.
know. And I think that for me, Dan, is the reason why I think that's so important that we are able to do that as coaches.
Yeah. Well, as coaches, we wear different hats, and I do the same. There's the coaching hat, which is keeping quiet and asking the right question at the right time in order to break through whatever self-perceived limitation there is on the part of the client. But then every now and again, I'll have to take my coach hat on and put my mentor hat on, because I try actively to work with people who I have been in the same shoes of, not from a job title perspective, but from a problem perspective. I want people to approach me who can see that I have potentially solved or am further along the line of solving a particular problem, because that then gives me the ability to say, here's how I overcame what you're struggling with right now, and dip in and out of coach and mentor. And then occasionally, this happens less frequently, I'll step into consultant, and consultant is, here's what you need to do.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? There's a frame, I think, which is really useful. Those three avatars or personas of coach, mentor, consultant. Coach is, how would you achieve? It's the question to the client. Consultant is, here's what to do. Mentor is, here's how I did this. And I think that you'll probably be stepping in and out of those different identities throughout a single coaching conversation. I think
Sometimes
that's what gives it a lot more depth and a lot more nuance, and ultimately forms a much better relationship between the coach and the client.
just to say, just to add one more to that as well. Sometimes I put on the big brother hat as well. Not like big
Oh
brothers,
yeah, the
but
tough
like,
love.
as a big brother to them.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and like recently, I was coaching a recruiter, an owner, and a founder, and he wasn't really enjoying BD. I said to him, I was like, and I tried to coach him, tried to go with different solutions and stuff, and it came down to he just didn't want to do business development and
Mm,
was trying to outsource his way out of it. And I said to him, "When are you going to step the fuck up?" He said,
mm.
"What? I'm paying you." And I was like, "When are you going to step the fuck up? When are you going to realize that you've got other people relying on you, and you're only gonna succeed if you do this. You keep on outsourcing it to other people. You're putting your fate in other people's hands. When are you going to step the fuck up?" And off the back of that, he hung up the phone, called up a client, pulled 4 jobs, called me back about 15 minutes later. Goes, "Right there, you fucker. Like I've got 4 jobs." Like, "Right, you can do it. I know you can do it." He goes, "Do me a favor, Dan. Keep talking to me like that every time." It's like, okay. So we just figured out that he responded really well to that hat. But you're absolutely so right, Dan.
Mm,
It's so there's a misguided perception on what it means to be a great coach. But
yeah.
I just want to finish again, shining the spotlight on what you're doing. So one other thing that you've done recently, and it really stood out to me, was the Ripple project, right?
Mm.
Something that I saw in the new year, like um, just walk the users through it. What is the Ripple project?
The mission. So it's not the business. It is a project, and I didn't know whether to put it as a experience on my profile or not, but it felt like the only place for it really. There isn't a project section, so something that um, I have found to be really powerful in every organization I've ever worked with, and every coach that I've worked with, and mentor and therapist, all of the best ones that I really resonated with and got the most value from, they have been moving in a direction towards something that they're compelled to achieve that benefits not only them, but the people around them and even humanity at large at some point. And I wanted to become part of that mission with them. And addiction was that thing for me. It was, I want to help as many people overcome addiction, and people were like, yeah, cool, nice mission. I want to be part of that. And the Ripple project is my ongoing project, at least for 2025, but beyond that as well, to create a ripple effect of change. Because as you'll know, when you work with, especially a founder of a business, by helping them achieve their goals and get out of their way, and if use your example of picking up the phone and doing BD, well, it's not just them that is benefiting. In that case, it's their team, and their team might be benefiting other people, because if uh, that breakthrough that your client made got 4 jobs on, which then were fed down to his team, meaning that they earned more commission and have a better quality of life with their partner or whatever, suddenly that one comment that you made to step the fuck up has created a real ripple effect of change for other people. And it makes it, for me at least, so much more exciting, because it's a lonely world at times working at home and building a coaching business. So this project is my way of hopefully building a movement as opposed to just building a coaching business. Does that answer your question?
It does. It does. It really does. I think that's how we met, wasn't it? I was probably crying into a tub of Ben and Jerry's and saying I'm so lonely, and I think you were doing the same thing at the time as well, and we connected.
Yeah, it's tough, mate. It can get tough at times. It's a tough old gig. It's solo life.
But no, mate, it's really great to have you on. I really appreciate the insights and the honesty and, like, the candid conversation that we've had. So just I know it's not your primary mentor right now, but just anyone listening to this that is struggling with any sort of substance addiction, where would you send them?
If anybody listening back to this podcast specifically is struggling, just message me, because I have a few mentees that I work with now who are in that space, who are working with addiction clients, and they're really, really good coaches and therapists. So if you are struggling and you want me to refer you out to somebody who I know personally and have mentored, then I would be more than happy to do that.
Okay. And with the founder stuff that you're working on right now, so just lastly, what's your message to the audience, like recruiters, founders listening? You can leave them with one piece of the Dan Martin residue on the performance zone.
What a weird phrase. Do you want some, you want some of the Dan Martin residue? Yeah, like that. Yeah,
it sounds like a crime scene, doesn't it?
It does. Yeah, you want to be careful, mate. You get in trouble. If you want to go and check out the Dan Martin residue, go to my website. It's the danmartin.com. You'll find loads of information there about my process, the method that I follow, a bit more on my journey and the typical problems that I solve. But to leave someone with something, the primary points that I focus on working with founders nowadays are, there's really 2 main ones. Number one is cash flow anxiety. So founders who are absolutely obsessed with the revenue, and if it's not where they want it to be, then they beat themselves up. They feel like they've failed, and it just creates this negative ripple effect of frustration throughout the whole business. So that's the first problem that I'll help people solve. And the second one is that confidence piece. I think there are 2 layers of confidence as far as I can see. There's the external, which is what we put on LinkedIn. It's the clothes that we wear. It's the way that we communicate. And that's great. Most founders have got that dialed in. Otherwise, they wouldn't be in the position that they are. But often there's a lack of internal confidence and self-belief, which is where those ceilings come in, where people feel like they can't quite get to that next level. So if that resonates, and there's anybody who's kind of struggling from that internal self-belief, just don't know if I can get to the next level where I want to go place, then just drop me a message. I'd love to have a chat with you about that.
Awesome. Well, look, Dan, thank you so much for coming on. You've been Dan Martin. I've been Dan Alexander. This has been The Performance Zone, and you've been wonderful listeners. We'll see you on the next episode. Cheers. Okay, guys, that is a wrap for this episode. Now it's time to take what you've learned and keep pushing forwards. Remember, Bamboo Performance is here to support you every step of the way, whether that's through our one-to-one coaching, exclusive live events, or our online training platform. If you're ready, visit our website, and until next time, stay unstoppable. This episode is proudly sponsored by Orca, the online recruitment coaching academy. Get access to live coaching, online courses, and playbooks from the industry's top coaches. Your entire organization can get access for less than the price of one email per day. Sign up today at trainwithorca.com.